Welcome to the home team, the show where no matter who you root for here, you're a part of the home team. And today we are previewing week one of the 2025 NFL season. The long night is over. Football's back. So, jumping right in, we have a packed slate for week one, including, I believe it's 8 division games and at least one other game that I can count that's just massively important, even though it's not a division game. But whenever you have 8 division games to start the year, there's no room for error. There's no room for starting slow because basically it's not like you're just losing a game. You're essentially getting damn near double in terms of a loss. And with that being said, a lot of these teams need to show up and start strong. And that includes our very first game of the year, where on Thursday Night Football, the Dallas Cowboys go into Philadelphia and the Eagles begin their Super Bowl title defense against the rival Dallas Cowboys. Now, this game is obviously how best to describe this. I think less people are actually going to be talking about the Eagles than they probably should, mostly because of the incompetence of the Cowboys in the last couple of weeks. From the debacle of the PR drama side of this thing with Micah Parsons to the point where they traded him to the Packers. Um, that's going to be dominating the headlines, and I think that ultimately his presence wouldn't matter too much one way or another. I think the Eagles will remind everyone real quick why they're the favorite to win the NFC East. I think the Eagles defend home field on Thursday night and they defeat the Dallas Cowboys. Now, everybody remember on this second game, we have a game on Friday night. It is not just games on Thursday and Sunday. We have a game on Friday in Brazil between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Los Angeles Chargers. This technically is counting as a home game for the Chargers, um, but this is in Brazil. I believe it's a YouTube TV exclusive, so if anybody's trying to find the game, I believe that's where you'll find it. So, Kansas City and the Chargers. I think that this game is very, very interesting. It seems that people are kind of getting bored of the Chiefs and their success. And believe me, to a certain level, I understand that. My favorite team has lost 2 Super Bowls to them. I have not a ton of love for the Chiefs, but I think their demise might be wildly overstated. And the Chargers, while they're a good team and an ascending team, I think they're much the same team that they were last year, where they're going to be a good defensive team. They're going to try to run the ball, and they still just don't have the weapons to consistently pass the ball against good defenses. Um, I know they brought Keenan Allen back, but we'll have to see how he's looking as he ages. I think that the international game thing is definitely a wrinkle, and I've always made it a rule of you sort of have to throw out some things when it comes to these international games. I remember last year the footing was just terrible last year when it was the Eagles and who the hell did they play? The Eagles and the Packers when they played there last year. So I do think that there's some there's some level of oddness to be expected simply by the fact that this game is in Brazil, including the altitude. Uh, Actually, no, that's when they play in Mexico City, not Brazil. But I just know that there's a lot of weirdness, even in going like we see it just on cross country trips. So there's definitely a factor there. Ultimately, I'm gonna take the Chiefs. Um, they've proven it over and over again that they start the year pretty strong. They're not one of those teams where you're concerned about them coming out strange. So I think that if they're just able to shut down the run game of the Chargers, they'll probably keep them pretty well subdued on offense. And I mean, it's just tough to pick against them. So I have to see the teams in the AFC West beat them and take it from them before I'm just going to start throwing that out there. So I'm going to take the Chiefs to start the year. On to the Sunday games. So the games in the early window. We're starting off here with another division game. So we have 3 to start off here. Tampa Bay at Atlanta. Now, I do think there's a quite good chance that the Atlanta Falcons are a good team. Um, we all know what it essentially comes down to. Is Michael Penix going to take a step and really play well? And in the NFC South, you don't even have to play that well. Like you're not. It's not like you're trying to win the NFC East or the NFC North or something like that. To win the NFC South, you don't have to be as great. And the weapons in Atlanta are. I don't want to say they're awesome. Like, I don't want to say they're like this Hall of Fame weapons group, but they're definitely good. Um, I think Bijan Robinson, excuse me. I think he in particular is very good. I don't like that they've already had a big injury on their offensive line. I don't know how long term that is, but for this week, it's a factor. Um, Obviously, Drake London, he's a very good possession receiver in particular, but Michael Penix, if he's good, he could really be a boon to Drake London. And who knows, maybe this is the elusive year where Kyle Pitts finally breaks out. I know there's a whole bunch of people out there with him on their fantasy teams that are really hoping for that. So I think it's very possible. I also think that Tampa Bay is probably a little more stable. I don't love this constant change of offensive coordinator. I think that anytime that's happening, you're bound to get a bad one eventually, or one that just doesn't quite click to that same level. So that's always something that's very possible. And with Tampa Bay, it's just something to consider. I am going to say that Tampa Bay wins this game and that Atlanta is going to take a little bit of time to fully round into form, but by the second half of the year, they're probably going to be a bit more dangerous. Um, but I think that Todd Bowles going against a pretty inexperienced quarterback, I think he's going to dial it up and he's going to make it a really hard day for Michael Penix. And ultimately, that will yield Tampa Bay the win in Atlanta. Up next, the Cincinnati Bengals and the Cleveland Browns, another division game. And I think that this is one where it's really big for one team. I know that both teams will obviously want to win this, but we all know the history of the Cincinnati Bengals when it comes to early season like woes. I believe last year they started off what was it 0-3, including losing week 1 to the Patriots, which was devastating because ultimately any one of those losses, that one in particular, could have or like got them their playoff spot. I believe going into Cleveland, they are quite focused. There's a reason they play their starters in the preseason. There's a reason that they've been talking about it. Like there's an emphasis in Cincinnati on starting hot, and I'm going to pick them to beat the Browns because I believe at some point either they have to start off well or we have to have a bigger conversation about what's going on in that building. We already know that the ownership group's not great, but I'm talking about like from a coaching standpoint. Why are we not able to come out and start the year really strong against a weaker opponent when we have one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, one of the best receivers in the NFL? That defense might not be good, but that's the bed that the Bengals chose to lie in. And if they're not able to come out and start strong against the Cleveland Browns, then I mean, we got to have a real conversation about okay, what is going on in the preparation of the Cincinnati Bengals to start seasons where they are behind. So I'm going to choose to believe that that can't happen against the Browns and that this team's being very intentional about what they want to do. And I'm going to take them to beat Cleveland. Miami at Indianapolis. Not a division game. Still a conference game, so you don't want to be losing these ones either. But at least you're not losing a division game if you do. So Miami at Indianapolis. Both these teams are a very interesting experiment for me. I think that they're both going to be like huge momentum teams this whole year. Where I think if one of these two teams starts off really poorly, that can snowball really fast. And obviously you got the quarterback situation in Indianapolis with Daniel Jones beating out Anthony Richardson. And what does that look like? Does it actually look more stable, or is Daniel Jones going to be erratic? I think Miami's offense is still going to be potent. They still have good receivers. When Tua's in there, the offense is functional. It's going to be that defense and the offensive line that I'm really looking for with the Miami Dolphins. I don't think that they're like this. They're not really a contender this year. I think that at best they're kind of a fringe playoff team, but I also think that's sort of where Indianapolis is sitting right now too. So I'm going to take Miami because I need to see what Daniel Jones looks like first. And that's sort of a theme in week 1 in terms of how I pick a lot of these games. A lot of the time it's who has more question marks and more variables about what can go wrong. And in this game, I believe that's Indianapolis. Carolina at Jacksonville. Not an awesome game for Panthers and Jags fans to start the year on. This is probably the one out of all of them that has the least amount of stakes. I'm going to take the Jaguars to win this game for a simple reason. Number one, they're at home. Number two, Carolina still has a lot of work to do on the defensive side of the ball to get it to where they want to be. And I think that Jacksonville has enough talent that they should be able to still beat Carolina. This might be a closer game, and I'm really, really excited to see what Bryce Young looks like, especially after he bounced back in such a major way last year. Um, if if he continues to do that, and especially if he has a strong connection with Tetero McMillan, who they picked in the first round this year, um, I think that that has a potential to be special. I just think Carolina, they started their rebuild from a really low place, and I think that they're just going to take a little bit of time to round into form. Um, I don't think Jacksonville's some great team, but I believe that you got Brian Thomas Jr., you got Liam Cohen calling the plays. Trevor Lawrence is talented, if erratic at best. Um, but I just don't think Carolina quite has the defensive punch to throw at them, you know. So I'll take Jacksonville at home. Okay, the Las Vegas Raiders, they travel to New England to take on the Patriots. Now, this is a game that I am very sneakily interested in because these are two teams that have improved themselves potentially pretty significantly in a couple of ways. And I'm just wildly curious and fascinated by them both. In the case of the Raiders, obviously Pete Carroll comes in as the coach. They bring in Geno Smith as the quarterback. They draft Ashton Genty. They have Brock Bowers there. So they had the ingredients to be very interesting on offense. Defensively, it's sort of Max Crosby and just a couple other guys. I mean, there's nobody really significant on their defense other than Max Crosby. And I think that if they're going to have a big problem this year, it'll be there. But I think that in a game against New England is not this super potent offensive team yet. Obviously, they bring in Mike Vrabel to stabilize things as the coach. Drake May showed really promising signs in his rookie year, and his progression will essentially make or break the Patriots' season. And I think that going up against a team like Las Vegas, it'll tell a lot because they're not this super formidable defense. As long as they can keep Max Crosby under control, which easier said than done, but in theory, you're not having to go up against this monstrous front. You just have one monstrous player. Um, I would say that I'm gonna choose to take New England because I think defensively they're a little more formidable. And I very much believe in Mike Vrabel's ability to make his teams punch above their weight. We saw it for years in Tennessee, um, where they weren't the most talented, but somehow they were a team that just the Chiefs didn't like to play, the Ravens didn't like to play. Like they've just found a way to give people hell. And I think the Patriots are going to be pretty similar to that. And the fact that it's at home is also pretty significant to me as well. I think that if you're going to start off strong and you're going to start off with a team, I think they're roughly of like equal caliber, which is each of them could maybe steal the last wild card spot if things break right. Um, I think that being at home, the Patriots should be able to take this one. All right, Arizona Cardinals at the New Orleans Saints. So this is a tough one. So I'll just get out of the way. I'm taking Arizona. Um, I don't know if New Orleans is going to be the worst team in the league, but my God, they've got a shot at it. Um, Usually the team we all assume is going to be the worst, yada yada. They usually manage to sneak out a few wins every single year that we didn't expect, and I think being in the NFC South does lend itself to doing that. But I think Arizona is a team that is kind of overlooked. I don't know that they're going to win the NFC West. I think all four teams in the NFC West have like a pretty realistic path to winning it. So I won't say that they can't do it, but we're not going to get a great read on the Cardinals um, in a game like this unless it's just disastrous. And even then, I would caution everybody, every fan of every team, weeks 1 through 3 are not the time to be like making big judgments about your team. We see this all the time. I would say about week 4 is where you start to really be able to form an opinion, unless all three of those games looked exactly the damn same. But um, I would caution everybody about overreacting after 1 week. But I think Arizona, it's tough to get a read on them. against the Saints in Week 1. But I'm going to take them to win. Pittsburgh at the Jets. Okay, the one that everybody is interested in for all the weirdest reasons. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers going back to face the Jets. Justin Fields facing the Steelers. Um, that's the narrative. But I would ultimately guess that it's probably neither of these offenses that are going to win the day. These are two teams that still pride themselves on being defense first, and these are two teams that are both talented on defense. Um, I think that ultimately the difference is one of these offenses simply presents a little bit less of a threat, at least on paper, and to me that's the Jets. So I'm going to take the Steelers. Um, I think that they had Justin Fields in that building. They know his limitations. You could say the same thing about Rodgers, but I think Rodgers is just more conventionally sound regardless than Fields. And it just feels like I think the Jets are still a year away. I think defensively they could be formidable right away. Like I think Aaron Glenn is an outstanding defensive coordinator. To see what he did with the Lions last year, despite all the injuries, um, it's very impressive. But the Steelers start the year strong. They're always stable. Defensively, they're always sound and really, really like strong, especially early in the season when they're healthy. Um, Especially, the Jets, that offensive line is still a work in progress. There's like reason for optimism, but the Steelers are a hell of a challenge, and they revamped that secondary. Um, it just feels like the Steelers are ready to really go all in on a 1 year window, and I anticipate they're going to want to start off really strongly against the Jets. Last game in the early window, another division game, the New York Giants at the Washington Commanders. Now, I think this is actually a game that could be closer than people think for one very simple reason. I think the New York Giants defensive line is absolutely a like hellacious unit. Like they are about as good a all around front as you're gonna find, at least in terms of the defensive linemen. Dexter Lawrence is obviously the centerpiece of that, but Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, and then obviously the addition of drafting uh, who is it? Abdul Carter? Yeah. Drafting him, they have the potential to be very, very good. And if you're a team with a weak offensive line, they could give you a lot of problems. I just don't believe they have enough. Like, I don't think that should be enough to overwhelm Washington. If Washington's going to be the team that a lot of people seem to think they will be, um, that shouldn't be enough to completely throw you out of the way. And listen, I think Washington's a team that I don't think that they can necessarily win this year, no matter what they do. Purely from the perspective of they so overperformed expectation last year that they may have almost hurt themselves in doing so. We see this all the time, where a team that hey they're on the ascent, it's like okay cool, like we see the trajectory. And then they happen to win one or two playoff games, and it's like okay maybe it's a Super Bowl team. I think that remains to be seen with the Commanders, but if they are going to at least maintain their level, which I would count maintaining their level and proving themselves to be a year in, year out, like contender, like threatening type team, I would count that as a win for Washington. Um, if they're going to prove to be that kind of team, you beat the Giants week 1. You beat them, when you're at home. So I'm going to take Washington to do that because I think at the very least they are a dangerous team. Um, if not if not a full blown Super Bowl contender right now. Onto the afternoon window. Tennessee Titans at Denver Broncos, the debut of Cam Ward. And you could not ask for a more difficult challenge to debut to than that Denver Broncos defense. Um, I like Cam Ward. I hope he does well. I think the AFC South needs another team to really sit in there and battle with the Texans. And the Colts and Jags don't give you much reason for optimism. So I would love to see Cam Ward work out, and all of a sudden we have like a real competition for that division. Um, I don't think that that's going to happen in Denver. I think that Broncos defense, like they just have an answer for everything Tennessee could want to do. It's too much. They run complex schemes in their fronts. They don't even have a receiver that really demands Patrick Surtain chasing around, but if the Broncos decide they have someone they want to take out, I guess it's Calvin Ridley probably. Um, it doesn't feel like the Titans really have a super clear way to run their offense, unless you're going to tell me that Cam Ward is really going to be that damn good, where he's just going to come out right away and tear up what, like, from a personnel standpoint, anyways, is one of the strongest defensive units in the league. Um, I just think that as much as I have optimism for him and I'm rooting for him, I think it's just a little bit too much for the first game for them to pull that off. Unless the Titans defense is truly just one of the most phenomenal groups you've seen ever, and they're going to keep this thing within, like, for the Titans to win, this game has to be kept under 20 points for the Broncos, um, which is possible, but I just don't see it. I'll take the Broncos. 49ers at Seahawks, another division game, big one. Um, I think the NFC West, like I said, I see paths for all four teams to win this thing. And you don't want to be one of the teams that starts dropping division games. Um, the 49ers and Seahawks last year, they split their games, but other than that, the 49ers have done decently against Seattle of late. Sam Darnold coming in is obviously the biggest change for Seattle. That not to mention DK Metcalf out, Cooper Kupp in. What does that look like? Um, I think that there's a lot of reason for optimism in Seattle. And I think that Seattle's defense in particular is the thing that can be really good. But I need to see Sam Darnold first, because as much as, listen, I loved seeing him in Minnesota last year. He played awesome. You did also have Kevin O'Connell, who was an offensive coach. You don't really have that kind of offensive coach in Seattle. Um, you also had Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison and T.J. Hawkinson. Like, Minnesota, if you can't succeed in Minnesota, um, I mean, that's not great. So I need to see him with Seattle before I can really start making big predictions about them, because I think they have the widest range of outcomes in the division. The other three, it's sort of, if they're healthy, we have a general idea of the range they could fall in. But I think Seattle has such a wide range of things where if Sam Darnold plays like he did in Minnesota last year, they could win the division. They could win it running away. But if he doesn't, and if he plays like he did to end the year or any of the years previous in his career, Seattle also has the lowest floor. Um, so I think that makes it difficult. As for San Francisco, a lot of it's the same kind of faces. Some injuries in the receiver room still, and a big infusion of youth on the defensive side of the ball. I think that defense is the thing I'm more concerned about than anything else. If those young guys all of a sudden play great, like, wow, we're doing awesome stuff, then they could look as dangerous as they ever have. But I'm not willing to go that far. I need to see those guys step up, because usually when you're relying on a ton of young guys in your defense, you're bound to have a few that just don't work. In terms of who I'm picking, I'm going to take San Francisco to win this game, just because I think I at least understand offensively the level that they can hit. And I need to see Sam Darnold, like, show me something before I can sit here and say that Seattle's going to be beating the 49ers and the Rams in particular. I could see the Cardinals being a little bit closer, but I want to see Sam Darnold be Minnesota Sam Darnold. As for another division matchup, the Detroit Lions and the Green Bay Packers, huge one, especially after Micah Parsons arrives. I don't know how much he's going to play in this game. It's a little bit easier to plug and play an edge rusher than it is some other positions, for sure. So I imagine he's going to be out there and be making an impact. I also don't think Detroit's an awesome team to make that impact against, because they have really good tackles and a really good offensive line on the whole. But he's certainly an impactful player, and, like, literally, like, defensive level changing impactful player. So good job, Dallas, for giving him to Green Bay. I'm sure the Lions really thanking you for that right now. Um, I think that the Packers are very interesting as well. I know they drafted Matthew Golden. I still don't know that they have a number one receiver on that team. And if that's the case, then they're basically the same offense they were last year. And that means that we're once again just saying, okay, what's Jordan Love going to give us? And Jordan Love has been inconsistent. He's had some of, like, the hottest of hot streaks, and then all of a sudden he goes cold and he's making weird decisions. I don't think he's ever going to be terrible. Um, but if we're going to be really considering the Packers real contenders, he needs to show a lot more consistency at the very least. As for Detroit, the biggest question is how do we look with two new coordinators? Aaron Glenn and Ben Johnson are gone. Um, and what does that look like for the Lions? I like to think that they would have planned for this, given that they managed to keep both those guys around a year longer than people thought they would. They should have been having like a pretty clear succession plan in mind for both. So I'd like to think that they could be more prepared for it than some teams were. And as for just sheer talent and ability to start the season strong, I'm going to take Detroit to go into Green Bay and win that game. I think that's going to be a close game. I think that listen, if Micah Parsons has the kind of debut for the Packers that Khalil Mack had for the Bears, then all bets are off. But um, I think that Detroit's personnel is still just a level above the Packers, um, unless one of those receivers has woken up on Sunday and said, "I'm Devonte Adams 2.0. Look at that. We've saved the offense." Barring that, I think Green Bay's offense is probably just a little too similar to what they were, and the Lions are going to feel a little bit more comfortable just going in there and matching them. Last game in the Sunday afternoon window: Houston Texans and the Los Angeles Rams. One of the best games of the weekend, in my opinion. Also like one of the least important in terms of just implications in the standings, where it's a non-conference game and they're just two awesome teams, and I'm excited to see it. In terms of who I'm going to take, I've I don't feel awesome about doing this. I'm going to take the Rams. If Matthew Stafford's back just gives out on the first hit, then you know, whatever. Like I took a chance and I'll be wrong with it, but that's not a awesome game to be playing right away with a back problem with the Texans. Obviously, Daniil Hunter and Will Anderson are nasty. Um, they're the Texans corners are also really good. D'Amico Ryans is an aggressive defensive coordinator. Like they're going to go after Matthew Stafford and probably get him a couple times. Um, if he can hold up and that Rams offensive line can hold up in particular, then I'm going to take the Rams to win this game for one very specific reason. I think that the Rams front seven against the Texans offensive line could be a big advantage for the Rams. I think that the Texans offensive line is their Achilles heel. Um, if they can just harass CJ Stroud all day, then nothing else matters. Nico Collins won't matter. Like, none of the Texans running backs are going to matter. Any of that's stable. CJ Stroud and his amazing arm and all this kind of stuff, none of that matters if that offensive line does not hold up. And we saw it all last year, and then they traded away Laramie Tunsil. I think that it's got all the makings to be problematic, and obviously like Jared Verse in particular is who we're going to talk about, and rightfully so. But the Rams have a pretty good stable of guys to rush, headlined by Verse. I think that's going to be the biggest difference in Week 1, where we see it all the time. Offenses are sometimes a little bit out of sync in Week 1, and when you're already a little out of sync, and then you throw in the fact that this offensive line just might not be good, I think that means Rams win, unless the Stafford back thing flares up. But I'm going to choose to believe that in Week 1 it won't. So I'll take the Rams. Sunday Night Football, probably the best game of the weekend right here with between the Ravens and the Bills. If you're one of those two teams, this sucks to have in Week 1 when we see it all the time. Teams come out rusty. This is not a game you want to come out rusty in, because this game most likely has big playoff implications in terms of seeding right away. I think that the Ravens have the better team. I think the Bills are at home, and that helps. Um, and sometimes we see it early in the year with Baltimore. We saw it last year where they sort of have this weird early part of the year, and then they catch fire. And then obviously they lost to the Bills in the playoffs last year. Um, this is obviously a coin toss game in a lot of ways, but I'm going to take the Ravens. I think that they, despite already being really good, remained aggressive in the offseason in pursuing in like upgrading this roster, and I think particularly in the secondary that shows. And I, j- I hate to do it because I love the Bills and I like the Bills better than the Ravens personally, but I think that Baltimore is just the better team. And I think early on in the season, if you're not sure and everybody's healthy, just pick the team that you think is stronger. And for me, that's Baltimore. Despite the fact that I like Josh Allen like a bit more than Lamar Jackson, I like um, I mean, frankly, that's about it. Of like right now of the two teams, I really only like Josh Allen more than Lamar Jackson on the entirety of the two rosters. Um, so I'll go Baltimore, and I think that this could be the kind of year that could be really special for the Ravens. They have the kind of roster to go and win the Super Bowl. And then Monday Night Football, our first Monday night of the year, we have Minnesota and Chicago. Really fascinating game. Really fascinating game. Another Division One, obviously, where we get the debut of J.J. McCarthy, and then hopefully like the rebirth of Caleb Williams with Ben Johnson. I feel pretty strongly that both these teams are not going to win the division, but would just be the team you don't want to play if they manage to be a wild card. I think Chicago on is a little bit overlooked based on how last year went and based on how Caleb Williams looked. I also, perhaps to my own detriment, really believe in Ben Johnson as an offensive coach. And I believe that if he can't succeed with Ben Johnson, then he's got real problems. I believe the exact same thing for J.J. McCarthy in Minnesota. Um, the biggest difference between it all is I've seen Kevin O'Connell do all of this stuff multiple times, multiple quarterbacks as a head coach. So, with that being said, I'm going to take Minnesota to go to Chicago and win and spoil Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams' debut with the Bears. J.J. McCarthy, he's had an extra year in the scheme. He, like, I don't believe that they would have let Sam Darnold go and Daniel Jones go if they weren't confident that he could be the guy. I know a lot of people are like, well, he's the first round pick. They do that. They had every reason and every ability to explain, like, hey, listen, the way that last year went, we had to keep Sam around. JJ gets to learn, and when his time comes and when he's ready, he'll take it over. But they felt that they could let him go this year. I think Kevin O'Connell's a really smart coach, so I'm going to choose to believe that he's doing that because he knows something. So I'll take Minnesota. So to recap here, to win these games, I'm going with Philadelphia, Kansas City, Tampa Bay, Cincinnati, Miami, Jacksonville, New England, Arizona, Pittsburgh, Washington, Denver, San Francisco, Detroit, the Rams, uh, Baltimore, and Minnesota. Uh, and keep in mind, if your team loses these games, it's not the end of the world. And if your team wins this game, you're not winning the Super Bowl. We see this all the time where New England managed to win one last year. They beat Cincinnati and then could barely buy themselves a win the entire rest of the season. So, week one, let's all be excited. Let's hope everybody comes out healthy. And you know, let's just enjoy the fact that football's back. We get to spend an entire weekend watching football. So, yeah, thanks so much for tuning in. Hit like, hit subscribe, and hope everybody has a great weekend watching football. Peace.